Hello everyone, I'm Arindam Chaudhary, 18B0005, and this is my Environmental Biotech Day 1, where I will be talking about eutrophication due to water pollution in local water bodies, causes of this eutrophication, and ways this can be prevented. Now, living in an urban area, there are numerous examples of this in my neighborhood, and I will take up actual examples and pictures of sites to further explain myself in this video. What is eutrophication? Now, before we start off with this video, I would like everyone to know and have a basic idea of what eutrophication is and have the basic notion of what happens scientifically in this process. So, eutrophication can be defined as eutrophication is an enrichment of water by nutrient salts that causes structural changes to the ecosystem, such as increased production of algae and aquatic plants, depletion of fish species, general deterioration of water quality, and other effects that reduce and preclude use. So, eutrophication can even occur naturally over thousands of years when lakes grow old and they contain too many sediments. The process of eutrophication tends to speed up because of human activities via non-point sources and point source discharges of chemical nutrients in water system. So now the primary limiting factor for eutrophication is phosphate. The availability of phosphorus generally promotes excessive plant growth and decay, favoring simple algae and plankton over other complicated plants, and causes a severe reduction in water quality. Phosphorus is a necessary nutrient for plants to live and is the limiting factor for plant growth in many freshwater ecosystems. Phosphate adheres tightly to soil, so it is mainly transferred by erosion. Once translocated to lakes, the extraction of phosphate into water is slow, hence the difficulty of reversing the effects of eutrophication. However, numerous literature reports that nitrogen is a primary limiting nutrient for the accumulation of algal biomass. What causes eutrophication? Now, eutrophication, as we have discussed before, happens when there is a microbial disintegration of organic biowaste present in aquatic bodies. Now, because of this microbial disintegration, there is a higher concentration of nitrogen and phosphorus in those ecosystems where planktonic and microbial organisms can thrive. Because of this, the water in the aquatic bodies tend to become less pure. Now, eutrophication can be classified into different types on the basis of the source of eutrophication or the source of the waste which causes eutrophication. So, the sources are primarily of two types, point and non-point sources. We'll further go on to discuss different kinds of eutrophication. Concentrated animal feeding operations. Another main contributor of phosphorus and nitrogen nutrients are concentrated animal feeding operations or CFOs. Generally, the CFOs discharge a large amount of nutrients which find their way into rivers, lakes, streams, and eventually oceans. When they accumulate in high concentration, they plague the water bodies, triggering cyanobacterial and algal blooms. Aquaculture. This is a technique of growing fish, shellfish, and aquatic plants directly into the water that contains dissolved nutrients. This has grown to be a very popular practice lately, contributing to eutrophication. In case that people do not properly manage aquaculture, the food particles and the fish excretion can dramatically increase the levels of phosphorus and nitrogen in the water. This can trigger the abundant growth of microscopic floating plants. Sewage discharge. In numerous developing nations, people discharge sewage water directly into water bodies like lakes, rivers, estuaries, and other water bodies. The result is that high amount of chemical nutrients stimulate the growth of algal blooms. These aquatic plants threaten the survival of aquatic life in numerous ways. Even if some countries may treat the sewage water and still discharge it afterwards, it can still cause accumulation of nutrients. Hence, at some point, triggers eutrophication. Fertilizers. In most part, eutrophication boosts due to human activities and our dependence on using phosphate and nitrate fertilizers. People use fertilizers for agricultural practices on golf courses, lawns, and other fields. The fertilizer they use contribute to nitrate and phosphate nutrient accumulation. Rain can wash these off, eventually reaching rivers, lakes, and oceans. The nutrients feed aquatic plants and the hungry plankton. Hence, their photosynthesis activity boosts, causing a dense growth of algal blooms. Eutrophication. As we can see, this picture shows us a quintessential site of eutrophication. It is surrounded by homes, so the main reason for the water pollution would be disposal of household wastes in these waters. We can see in the picture that there is waste lying around the water body as well as in it. The degrading and rotting biomass gets acted upon by several microorganisms and thus resulting in a release of nitrogen and phosphorus. Due to lack of maintenance and initiatives taken by the local municipality and negligence on the part of people living in the area has caused this. Algal blooms have developed in the water body and an increase in the biological oxygen demand would have occurred. Oversupply of nutrients, most commonly as nitrogen or phosphorus, which leads to overgrowth of plants and algae in aquatic ecosystems, has caused this. After such organisms die, bacterial degradation of these biomasses results in oxygen consumption, thereby creating the state of hypoxia. Local site of eutrophication. As you can see, this picture shows us a quintessential site of eutrophication. It is surrounded by homes, so that the main reason for water pollution would be disposal of household wastes in these waters. We can see in the picture that there is waste lying around in the water body as well as around it. The degrading and rotting biomass gets acted upon by several microorganisms and thus resulting in a release of nitrogen and phosphorus. Due to lack of maintenance and initiatives taken by the local municipality and negligence on the part of the people living in the area has caused this. As we can see here, algal blooms have developed in the water body and an increase in the biological oxygen demand would have occurred. Oversupply of nutrients, most commonly nitrogen or phosphorus, would lead to an overgrowth of plants and algae in the aquatic ecosystem. After such organisms die, bacterial degradation of biomasses results in oxygen consumption, thereby creating the state of hypoxia. Here we can see surface level removal of wastes is being carried out as an attempt to reduce pollution. By diminishing the amount of sewage water that gets dumped into freshwater sources, we would be able to stop algal blooms. Hence, we will reduce eutrophication. All we need to do is to cut down on the amount of phosphates and nitrogen that get discharged into water systems. If municipalities and industries can control their waste discharge, then they will reduce the nutrient content in water sources. Eutrophication appears due to the use of phosphate and nitrate fertilizers. Composting constitutes a solution to the problem. This is a practice that helps you convert organic matter into compost manure. Hence, the nutrients in the compost manure do not have a high concentration of phosphate and nitrates. This picture shows the same site after 2 years, where after relentless effort by a team of 170 workers, the lake is now pollution free and a popular spot for people to hang out. Each truck contains about 5 tons of litter. Therefore, around 50 tons of litter is cleared every day, said an official. By understanding what is eutrophication, we learn what the effects are and what we can do to stop this. Water pollution has a massive impact on the environment, affecting numerous species of animals and plants and humans. By diminishing water pollution, we diminish the boost of eutrophication.